I have a text for you today. Whoa, going back about 50 years. Fiona will put it up. This is one of my goosebump texts. It's a goosebump text because I get goosebumps every time I read it. Paul says, I start from the because there. Because I know whom I have believed, and I'm convinced that he's able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that day. That's one of my goosebump texts. It breaks down very conveniently into 3 bits. And the first bit is, I know whom I have believed, which Fiona will put up the slide for. I know whom I have believed because I met with him. And I met with him right here on the second slide. That is the Friends Meeting House, the Friends of the Society of the Quakers, in the Euston Road, and it holds 1,000 people. It's a big worship area. And I was almost 17 years old when I and 999 other kids in teenagers were in that place. About 3 weeks earlier, before we went there, the youth group here had a visit from the youth group in West Hampstead. And after the meeting, which was testimonies and so on, their leader, Doug Gibson, nailed me in the corner. How long have you been a Christian? He says. Oh, I'm not a Christian. Why not? I'm not good enough. Quite right, you're not. Why is that? Well, I'd fail all the time. Yep, so you would, he says. And the conversation went on like that for another 10 minutes. Everything I said, he had an answer for that I couldn't wriggle away from. But he was very gracious and he didn't push it, but he stopped at a crucial moment. And then 3 weeks later, Saturday the 28th of April 1962, we're at the youth rally in that place. And the main speaker was a man called David McInnes. And he was standing in the middle and he had a big wooden cross that was a bit taller than him. And as well as that, he had 2 thinner crosses, a white one and a black one. And using the white one, he explained that Jesus was cursed, hanging on the cross for me. He was totally sin-free, so he put the white cross on to represent his purity. But God allowed him to carry my sin, and he put the black cross on to pay the price for it. There were 1,000 kids there, but he was talking direct to me. We were invited to go to a short meeting afterwards, and I discovered there were about 30 other kids who were also being spoken to directly. And we had the opportunity to pray the prayer, to ask Jesus forgiveness and to receive him into our lives. And so I did that at 9:10 on April the 28th, 1962. And I know whom I have believed because I met him. The next part of this goosebump verse is that I'm convinced that he is able. And there are three ways that I've picked. So slide 3. Convinced he's able. I could have. There's hundreds of things I could have picked, but I've picked 3. And the first one is that he is able to heal. Valerie and I had been married 2 years in 1969 when she became very ill over a few weeks, and she lost the use of her legs, had no balance and was vomiting. And I had to take her into the neurology hospital in Queen's Square. And she was there for 5 weeks, big doses of cortisone. And after that, 2 weeks of rehab at a place in North London to learn to walk again. It turned out to be multiple sclerosis of the relapsing and remitting kind, but it was at a time when there were no scans available, so they couldn't sort of prove it, but it was pretty obvious that it was that sort of thing. And she had more relapses, especially after the children were born, with the broken nights, the fatigue is the big enemy. with MS, and she recovered. But each time it would take several months, 3 and 4 months. And then in the early 2000s, her symptoms seemed to disappear. She could do 100 miles plus in the car with no loss of balance, no illness, whereas before she'd been 10 miles and she'd be feeling sick and off balance. No meds, no nothing. Lots of people praying. We had one lady who prayed for her every day for 30-something years here in the church. And Father restored her. She hasn't had a symptom in the last 12 or 14 years, really. He's able to heal. And then he's able to open and close doors. Another story for you. In the early 1980s, I was chief of production for British Gas, the firm they now call Centrica, for the 2 newly developed offshore gas fields, one in Morecambe Bay, one the other side of the Yorkshire coast called Rough, and for the Witch Farm oil field down in Dorset. And I spent 3 years living out of a suitcase while we went from a handful of 5 people up to 750 people and 2 working gas fields, and sold the oil field at the government's behest. I realised that I was missing the kids growing up. I sensed Father saying, "You must leave gas," and people thought I was mad. I was on a high, as it were, in the career, and looked set for great things. But I felt I should look for something else away from that. And I had in mind general management, because I was number 2 to the general manager who was over all of that stuff. And he was away 30% of the time. So I had quite a lot of practice at general management. And I went to one of those recruitment consultants who give you a free hour, you know. And I said, I'm interested in general management. And he's asked me a few questions, and then he said, there's no reason why you shouldn't get a general management job. It probably won't pay as much as you're getting now, but, you know, shouldn't be a problem. And I said to him, I wondered about the health service, because they were just appointing general managers at that time. The man, my namesake, who was the boss of Sainsbury's at the time, had been called in by the NHS to install general management. And he nearly fell off his chair laughing, this guy. I was wishing I hadn't said anything, really. Oh, well, good luck with that, he said. So a few weeks later in the paper, an advert appeared for a unit general manager in the Richmond, Twickenham and Roehampton Health Authority, which is quite low, just over the river from here. And I went for an informal chat with the district general manager, who it turned out was also an outsider from the NHS. And he said, you won't get this job. It was the acute job to look after the hospital. He said, but I'm going to be advertising for a community manager. That's all the clinics and health centres, the district nurses, all the people who serve the public out in the community. He said, that would suit you down to the ground. So Father opened that door. I was actually in Manchester at the time. I flew down from Manchester early in the morning. I was interviewed by 2 panels of 4 and 5 individuals. I knew my story off by heart by then. And I got the job. God opened the door. And then 2 years later, he closed it. But the closing of it is another story and another talk. But he does open and close doors. He knows what we need. The third thing, he's able to uphold. And in Isaiah 41, verse 10, it says this, that Fiona will put up. Do not fear, I am with you. Do not be dismayed, I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And it's the uphold bit that I've wanted to focus on. He upholds people. This is not a story about me, it's about my good friend Brian, who became a Christian a couple of years before me. He was one of the people who prayed me into the kingdom. And he had a mother who was a believer and a grandmother who was a believer, just like Timothy, if you read 1 Timothy. And I wrote to him this week, quoting that verse to him, because his wife Jean has been through 18, 20 months of treatment for a very aggressive breast cancer involving surgery and 2 lots of chemo. And she's been very, very poorly with it, and he's had to buckle down and take care of her. So I wrote this. I write to him from time to time. She and Valerie correspond. I write to him from time to time just to see how he's doing. And his reply was this: I'm okay, but a bit frustrated by not being able to ease Jean's suffering. However, spending time in A&E yesterday, which he'd taken her there because she was so poorly, I realised that there are many others with worse issues than us. So this couple have endured all manner of difficulties in their lives. They've had difficulties with their children and still are. One of their sons who's mentally not quite unwell. And all sorts of things have gone on. They've also suffered enemy action in churches where they've been. But there's a man there who God is upholding. And he's okay through it all because God is upholding him. He wouldn't be so okay if it wasn't for that fact. So then we come to the third part, that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him until that day. We have the next slide, can we, Fiona? That's it. So that day refers to the day of the Lord. And this list of things could be said to be part of the day of the Lord. It won't be a 24-hour day, it will be 7 and a bit years. But it will, at some point, Jesus is going to return. He said he's going to return. He tells the truth. The Bible, everything the Bible has predicted that is in the past has come true. There is no reason to suppose that this day will not come true as well. And some of these things are very difficult. I'm not going to go into the detail of whether we're raptured before or in the middle of the tribulation or after it. That's another sermon series, I think. So we won't go into that. But this is going to be frightening, humbling, soul-searching, terrifying, all those things. It's described graphically in the Revelation of John. And the other thing about this is the day of the Lord is that everything will be brought into the light. That although we as Christians don't come up for the white throne judgment, that's the sheep and the goats, heaven and hell, because we are citizens of heaven if we've trusted Christ. But he will require from us an account of how we've used the gifts he's given us and the time he's given us on earth. And that too will be humbling, embarrassing, hurtful, because it will be hard to bear. All the dross, all the rubbish will be burned off. But we shall come through it alive. That which is of no value will be taken away, and that which has been of value in eternity will receive the reward that he has for us, for all that we've done to serve him. So what are we to do? In the light of that, if we believe all those things that we've just been through that are covered by this text, what are we to do? I'd like to suggest that there are 2 things to do and 1 thing not to do. First thing to do is to prepare our hearts before him, to live as though he was going to come tomorrow, and that all that stuff was going to be kicked off tomorrow. We don't want to be found wanting at that time. We want to be found looking faithfully to him. The other thing we need to do is to seek his will in our lives. He will open doors and close doors for us, but he wants us to seek him and to ask him, which way do we go? Do we go to the right or to the left? Elsewhere in Isaiah it says you'll hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. God is not going to leave us on our own, but he needs us to direct our hearts towards him and seek him. And then the thing we're not to do is to be afraid. Jesus always tells us, I can't remember how many times it is in the New Testament that Jesus says, don't be afraid, but it's an awful lot. So that's the whole verse. I know whom I have believed and am convinced that he's able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that day. In his name, amen.